Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Elephant in the Room. Today, I know it's been a little bit of a short hiatus, but today I have a very, very special guest with me that I've had to chase down for a little bit. As you see, is now becoming a trend of all my guests. I kind of have to chase them down multiple times. I don't know if it's the fear of being recorded or just like busy schedules, but we
Busy.
find a way to make it happen. And I'm really appreciative of everyone who takes their time out to speak to me, especially on the record, about their lives and how it relates to what I want to talk about. Today, my guest is none other than my sweet, sweet mother. So I'll give her an opportunity to introduce herself, and then we'll talk a little bit about what we'll be discussing today. So, without any further ado, my guest, Mrs. Jacqueline Tobierre, my dear and beloved mother, welcome, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you so much, my son. My name is Jacqueline Tobierre, like you've already said, and I'm a proud mother of two children, a son and a daughter. I work as a police officer at the Hiwanura International Airport, and I have been doing that for 37 long years. I love my job, and this is why I think I stayed in it for that long. I am also very passionate about helping the poor people, the needy people in the community. I am a president of the St. Vincent de Paul Society, a society that takes care of the less fortunate. And I am a very outgoing person. I love to talk to persons. I love going out. I love meeting people, making new friends. And that's about it.
Perfect. Tell us a little bit about, or tell us how long you've been married for.
Okay, I've been married for 29 years.
Okay. So today, a lot of our conversation will be centered about marriage and children. So since
Okay.
I moved here to the States, I've noticed that just the way that they describe marriage or maybe the sentiments they have around it is a little different to how we see it in St. Lucia. I think that with marriage for them, it's like, at least from what I saw growing up, like for marriage for them, it's a big deal in terms of like the proposal has to be, this kind of production. The wedding itself is some kind of production. It's a different way of seeing things. So I just wanted to explore that a little bit from someone who's gone through it themselves. So my first question to you is what do you remember as your earliest thoughts on marriage? For example, I know some people have, as little children, they have like a dream wedding. Some people say they want to get married in Italy, or they want to get married in France, or they want to get married in front of the pitons or whatever. Like what was your earliest thoughts on marriage? Like what did you see as your dream wedding? And also like from maybe what you saw from like older couples around you, like married people when you were a kid.
Well, actually, growing up, weddings for me was always to be taken part, to be taken place in a church.
Right.
I grew up knowing that, and this is what I knew, and this is what I looked forward to do, and this is what I did. I looked at wedding as something spiritual, and I believed that it had to take place in the church. It's only afterwards, after how many years after that, I realized that people get married in the field, in the hotel, anywhere of their choice. But for me, wedding, I look at wedding as something taking place in a church, and I'm happy that I did it in a church.
Was there anything else about it that like excited you? For example, like the dress, or now like before people, like before weddings, people do like a bachelor party or bachelorette party, or was it like a honeymoon? Like was there anything else that excited you about weddings?
Well, what excited me about wedding is that I grew up in a Christian home, and I believe that, in growing up, you start dating. I really looked at it as something that you ought to do. Since I grew up with that Christian mentality, I looked forward to getting married before I settle down and have my children. And I looked at wedding as a special gift. a special occasion, a special moment where you dress up, because I looked at it as a one time thing until death do us part. So I looked at that day as a special day for me. I dress up in all my white attire and I go to the church. The church is nicely decorated with the guests and the priest and everything. That is what I look forward to in a wedding, apart from the commitment and everything else that goes with it. But I was looking forward to that being my dream wedding. I did not have when I got married, there was no big fuss about honeymoon. So actually, I've never really gone on a honeymoon.
Okay.
After the wedding, I stayed at my home because my home was newly built. I had no children. I had nobody to trouble me. So I stayed at home. And sometimes I joke my husband. I said we need to go on our honeymoon because we've never gone out to say we'd go overseas or go to a hotel. But for me, that was not a must. I
Right.
just looked at the spiritual aspect of it and going to the church and having it done.
Okay. Did you was it like an automatically it was a big thing of a meeting of families, or because for example right now like in the states, people do this thing. I don't know if you're familiar with the term eloping. So elope
Mhm.
is like when people just kind of like two people when they get married, they just go to a church or they go to the courthouse or whatever and they just get married. Was part of like bringing the families together and having that celebration like a big part of it as well, or was it like as long as we get married, it could be the two of us in the church, it's fine?
No. For me, it was bringing family together from the planning stage into the up to the execution of the wedding. It was bringing family together, planning together as to what we're gonna do, who's going to contribute, who's going to take care of this, and how we do it. And this is how it went. And naturally, in Saint Lucia, especially around my time, this is how it would happen.
Okay. So what do you think like the general sentiments around marriage and weddings in St. Lucia was like at the time? Because like especially in the youth, so like when people were growing up, like your friends in your teenage years, maybe even early 20s, do you think that's something that people were looking forward to, like yes, I want to get married? Or was it like, I mean, if it happens it happens, if it doesn't it doesn't, like I good on my own? Like what was the sentiment or the feelings around people getting married like as a young person at that time?
In my time as a young person, I think most young persons were looking forward to getting married. You get a boyfriend, and then the next step would be to get married. And your parents, especially, would put that at the back of your mind that if you ready to settle down, you have to get married.
Okay, okay.
But not
So
everybody had the opportunity to get it done.
okay. So in the like, getting a boyfriend, getting a girlfriend, like what was the typical date like? Or how did you even meet people? Because like nowadays, like people have social media, people have dating apps and stuff. So how were people meeting each other back then?
Well, most persons they would meet maybe from the community, you know that person, maybe the next door neighbor, you all grew up together, so you all met that way. Some met at church, like for me, I met my husband in church. I mean,
Okay.
we were both church goers, and that's how it started. Or they used to have football games in the community. So as young persons after school, we would go to the field and the fellas would be playing football. So that attraction would start from there.
Okay.
But there was no phone, there was no social media where you could, communicate with
Yeah.
persons. So that's the way we used to meet our people.
Do you think that like limited a lot of people to like just people in their communities? Because obviously like in that sense, like you would not necessarily meet somebody from Viewfort or from Castries or Grosile or even overseas. Like do you think that limited, or did people ever think like, okay, I want to go and see what people are like in Castries, like I want to maybe find a partner over there? Like did people move around looking for that?
Well, it limited persons to a certain extent in that you growing up in the community and you don't do much moving around. So you just see the next door neighbor. But then on the other hand, there are persons that left their community and would go out maybe to the city or the towns to work. And in finding work from there, they would also find a partner.
Okay, okay, got you.
Mhm.
Was the homemaker, like what they call it in America, or the stay-at-home wife, was that a common thing here? Where, like people get married and then like wife stay at home, wife take care of the house. Was that a common thing? Because like, just from my understanding of what happened in America, like during the 50s, 60s, 70s, even like up to the 2000s, even maybe even sometimes today, a lot of like people get married and then the wife stays home and then the husband goes out. Was that a common thing in St. Lucia at that point?
You mean during the time I got married?
Yeah, or even before
No.
it.
Before it was the wife would generally stay home, be a housewife. But in my
Okay.
time, it was different because you would need to work to sustain the family, the husband, or even the children coming in. So most persons during my time, they would be at work, they would be working.
Okay. How like what so when you got to that point, like if dating now and you getting to know someone, like what made you decide, or when did you think that you were ready? Because you know that ultimately you wanted to get married, but what made you decide that this was the point where you were ready to make that decision?
Okay, you're talking about me personally, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Well, after dating for a number of years, I felt that I needed to settle down. I felt I was growing older. I needed to settle down. So we started planning on building our home. We worked together. We built our home. So I decided that before I move into the home, I need to get married. And that was something I always had at the back of my mind. And my mother especially, my dear mother, she always instilled that in our minds that she did not want us to go and live with any man in the house before we get married.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I grew up with that in mind, and I passed it on to my boyfriend at the time, and I told him that I'm not going to move into the house until I got married. And so
Mm-hmm.
he was not too keen about it, but when I made him believe and I showed him what I believed in,
Yeah.
so we decided to get married.
Okay. And what was that the process like the planning and the execution from agreeing to get married to like the reception and everything? What was that process like, and what did you have to like get
Oh my God,
settled
it
in?
was
Yeah.
a long process. It took like maybe for a year. The planning took about a year before we actually settled down and had it executed. Because I mean, most of the work was done by me and my family because with the men and especially my husband, he only had one sister, so and the men don't have much to do. So the bulk of the planning was done by me and my family, getting the bridal party, getting the color scheme, getting the venue, getting the other things that you need to make the wedding look, decorating the church, getting the persons to do whatever the readings, performance, getting the MC, getting all of that, the caterer, what to prepare, what to cook, what amount, the shopping and everything. The majority of that was done by, but we were in constant communication as to what I'm doing and what he's doing and his contribution and so on and so on. But it
Yeah.
was a long process. But I must say that it was well executed. Everything went on as planned, except for the reception. I was a bit disappointed in it, but that did not stop our wedding.
Why were you disappointed in the reception?
Well, the reception was in an open area in the multipurpose center in the resort, and I don't know if it because I mean I have a lot of persons that are my friends, and also my husband have a lot of persons that are my friends. And because we got a lot of invaders at the reception. So you find out that there was a bit of chaos with the invaders coming around, and you have to serve your guests, and they will not wait until they be served. They will just come in and say, "Oh, that is Jacqueline's wedding, and that is Tony's wedding," and so that was the disappointment.
Okay. So what are your thoughts on like small weddings? So when people like, because obviously, like you said, some people have lots of friends, right? But if for whatever reason, maybe for that reason itself, people want to limit the amount of invaders or the amount of just like mouths they have to feed. What are your thoughts on people having small weddings? Because you spoke about like people connecting families, but sometimes people have huge families and just being able to be like, well, I know all of you are my family, but I kind of just want maybe my immediate family that I live with and maybe my parents and some of my sisters. But so what are your thoughts on people having like smaller weddings?
Well, honestly, I have no problem with somebody having a small wedding. I wanted a big wedding at that time because actually I had not experienced it. I did not know the downfall of it or any disadvantage to it. I wanted a big wedding, but after I had my wedding and I've been to big weddings and I've been to small weddings. I have no problem with somebody having a small wedding. And I always say it's what suits you. It's what suits you. And the time I got married and the time now is two different era. So what
Right.
you could have done before, you cannot do it now. And the things that you'd look for in a wedding, the things you look for in a wedding now, these things were not present in a wedding in my time. You
Right.
understand? So you could afford to have a big wedding once you invite the persons, and but now you have so many things to do to bring out your wedding. You need video, you need camera, you need this, you need that, and so on and so forth. So
Yeah.
a small wedding. And again, the when you have a wedding, the smaller it is, the better. To me, it's the better. People really concentrate on the meaning of the wedding and so
Yeah.
on. But with the large group, it sometimes it tend to lose the focus.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with somebody having a small wedding.
Okay. So you mentioned like you didn't know much about weddings. So did you go to a wedding at all before your own wedding?
Yes, I think I attended maybe one or two weddings before I had mine. Yes.
And was there anything in those that you were like, okay, I want to emulate that or I want to try to have that at mine?
Yes, I think maybe like the bridal party that the way they would enter the church and what they did and things of that sort. Yes, I try to emulate it from one of the or two weddings that I attended before that.
Okay. Okay. Um so like you mentioned also that you because of like the nature of the economy at the time, everybody had to keep working and stuff. What was that like working while planning a wedding and stuff like what was the balance there like?
Well, honestly, like I told you, it was hectic, very, very hectic because I work a shift system and planning a wedding. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of, and at that time there was no order in overseas. Not even in Viewfort you could get wedding supplies. So I had to be going back and forth castries, back and forth castries, back and forth castries. I remember in the latter stages, I actually used to be so sleepy that I used to sleep on the bus because like every week I had to be in Castries. I had to go and do invitations in Castries. Go and look for material for bridesmaid in Castries. Go and look for shoes in Castries. Go and look for your my dress. Everything had to be done in Castries. So it was like and I did not have my own personal vehicle. So I had to be taking the bus often every day, every day. So I must
Hmm.
say it was a very tedious tedious job.
Okay. Okay. What like before you came to this point because you had like the dream or expectation of getting married, like what kind of
Mhm.
conversations did you have with my father to like prior to your getting married, like what did you speak of in terms of like finances, expectations, goals, children, all that kind of stuff? What kind of conversations did you have before you made that decision?
Well, I must tell you that your father is not somebody that likes talking. He doesn't like to
Mm,
indulge in discussion. Compared to me, I like talking and
yeah.
expressing myself. He's not that kind of person, so it's very limited. So we had a conversation like, okay, I think I want 4 children when I get married.
Mm-hmm.
Um, well, we would have both of us are working, but I am the one with a secure job. So if we have to take a loan, I am willing to take the loan and you
Okay.
assist me and things of that sort. And we want the best for our children. And we had
Right.
some conversation, but nothing like I was the one always coming up with the problem. And it's like everything I say, he would agree to it. Everything I say, okay, yes, 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 but not to say he would have really have an input into it.
Okay. Okay. Did that worry you at all?
Well, at the time, not really. Not
Okay.
it didn't worry me. I looked at it as okay, he's the obedient partner. So I take the
Okay.
I take the decisions and he agrees to it.
Okay, and that worked for you. So I think it's
Yes, it
important
worked
that
for
people
some
find.
time. Yes, it
Yeah.
worked for some time.
Okay. Why do you think that you spoke about like your the process of getting married? You thought about it for a long time when you were younger. Why do you think that now, like in especially maybe young people in St. Lucia, that we've seen like a decline in people getting married or even wanting to get married?
I think one of the things young persons don't want to get married or decline to get married. Number one, like I said, I look at wedding as marriage as something that starts from the church, and that spiritual aspect of it that is dying in a lot of households in St. Lucia. A lot of our children in St. Lucia, they grow up in the church, but they don't go to church. Sometimes their parents go and they don't go. So that alone would not inspire them to get married. Or some others, they they are working, they're working for big money, and they feel dependent on themselves, that they don't need a husband to assist them financially, so they don't feel like getting married. And some of them, they will tell you they don't want any man to rule them, because some of them look at, like, if you married, the man would be, like they say, the man of the head of the house, or as if the man is going to rule them. So these are some of the factors that would like young people growing up now, they don't have the tendency on getting married.
So, couple questions from that, right? So,
Mhm.
firstly, how do you think, as someone who's an avid churchgoer, how do you think the church promotes marriage?
Well, the scripture says that a man shall leave his mother and father and cling unto his wife,
Hmm.
and the two shall become one. So, as a churchgoer, if you hear that word, you would have to realize that at some time you and your partner would have to leave each other's family, each other's homes, and come together as one, and not just by living together, but by engaging in the sacrament of holy matrimony.
Okay.
But I also feel, on the other hand, that the church is not doing enough. Apart from the scripture verse that we all know, the church should be having maybe seminars or whatever, especially for the youths, the young persons growing up, to
Hmm.
instill in them or to show them the beauty of marriage and where it stems from, and things of that sort, encouraging them to live a life of a wedding life, wedded life.
Do you think that also people maybe, like, so before, like, you spoke a little bit about like the finance part of it, maybe
Hmm.
before, like, for you to um maybe survive, you needed like two incomes, because like the
Hmm.
economy is not the best in St. Lucia,
Right.
and just like you needing two incomes to kind of get by in terms of bills and groceries and all that. And maybe
Hmm.
now other people are fortunate enough to get a tertiary education, a university degree or two degrees or whatever, and they get that
Hmm.
job. Do you think that because of that, people are like, or is it right rather for people to feel, well, if I don't need to get married and I'm comfortable financially, that I shouldn't get married?
It is not right.
Okay.
It is not right. But some people think along those lines and say, "Well, I'm working for my money. I don't need any man. I can take care of myself. I don't need any man, so I don't need to get married."
Hmm. So, do you? But I just want to play what the devil's advocate a little bit, and just ask, because the argument can also be made that people feel like, as much as, like, yes, maybe they would love to have someone that they can spend time with and get, but they maybe just don't feel like they have someone at, like, who's just compatible with them, whether that's like someone who doesn't share the same goals, or
Hmm.
someone who doesn't have, should they just decide, well, I really want a companion, I just go ahead and just like find anyone? Because
Yes,
I think that I'll just, and that's based on very loose research from just some of the girls and women that I know in my life. It's just like, I mean, a lot of them say, sure, they would like to have a partner, but it's just meeting people who maybe they
making
are
the
not are
right
not edu-
person.
are not educated,
Yes.
don't share the same sentiments with them.
Hmm.
Financially, they just feel like they're the ones making more of the money, and if they get into that kind of arrangement, it will just set them up for a lot of stress of like,
Hmm.
one person not
Yes.
working. So,
You
what would you say to
you
these people?
you're so right about that.
Hmm.
And it works both ways. You may find somebody that that's not compatible to you, that is not educated as you, and the two of you all can work together, and like, wherever he is weak in, you stronger, so you all work together, you all have understanding, you all communicate together, and it works. But on the other hand,
Mm-hmm.
That person, maybe in the beginning it would work, but after a while, they don't listen to you, they don't respect you, and that causes a whole set of problems. You
Right.
understand? So it's both ways. It is both ways.
And if you're someone who believes in just getting married once and that, so
Exactly.
do you
You might
think
want
it's
to stay in the relationship, and the relationship is not what it's supposed to be. So it is
correct?
also, it creates stress and frustration for you.
So in that sense, would you advocate for people, young women, just kind of deciding to just be on their own if they can't find a suitable partner, or do you think that that's something
Um,
that just completes life? Like you need that to say that you have a successful life.
you mean marriage?
Yeah.
No, no, no. I also believe that it's not everybody that is meant to get married. In as much as I personally looked forward to get married, and I believe I was born to get married, but I
Mm-hmm.
also believe that it's not everybody that is meant to get married. And if you, I would say to any young person, if you've been in a relationship with somebody and you realize that that relationship has a lot of pitfalls,
Mm-hmm.
don't run into marriage and say, okay, I'm getting married and it's going to change. No. The relationship, I mean, relationship is, no relationship is perfect. But the relationship that is leading to marriage, you have to see, you have to see through that relationship. You have to, both of you all have to understand each other and know that, okay, we are not perfect, but we can live with each other. Respect is important. I look at respect as number one.
Mm-hmm.
Respect for each other, and then out of respect the love will come and the love will grow. Okay, so if you find that relationship with a lot of nagging and disrespect and this and that and that, don't fall into marriage. That is not the right person for you.
Okay.
Okay, so not because I say that I look forward to marry, that I'm saying that once you jump into a relationship you want to get married because that's the end of life. No, some persons are not made to get married and they will stay by themselves or stay with a partner. In as much as I don't condone people living in common law relationship, but sometimes that's the way it is, because it is worse to get married and not having a good marriage instead of staying in a common law relationship with somebody.
Okay. Okay. I understand. What is your take on people who maybe want to put off marriage? For example, right? Some people might be like, okay, I am in school right now. Like you might meet someone that you're really compatible with and you really like, and they
Mm-hmm.
just like, well, right now I'm getting my bachelor's, and after my bachelor's, I want to go and get my master's, and I want to do my PhD, and like having a marriage in between that would just be too much because it's a lot on your plate, a lot of assignments and
Definitely,
stuff, and
definitely.
mentally. What do you say to people like that? To just kind of like right now, I just focused on myself and my goals, and then after that, whether I'm 30 years old after that, that's when I think I'll be ready to start looking. Even if right now they might feel like they have a good partner.
Okay, I would say to these persons, go ahead with your goal. Go ahead with your goal,
Mm-hmm.
and the marriage comes afterwards. Because, like you said, sorry, like you said, marriage takes a lot from you. Commitment, love, loyalty, that takes a lot from you. And if you know you cannot manage it with your goal, go ahead with your goal. Go with your goal, and afterwards, marriage comes. And marriage is focused on love. And if there is love, you can wait. If you love the person will understand and they will wait for you. Either man or woman, they will not wait for you. If you say your goal is in the next 2 years, you want to get married, they will be willing to wait for you.
Okay. And my last question for you regarding marriage before we move on a
Yes.
little bit is what do you think is the biggest lesson you've learned in 29 years of marriage
Huh. The biggest lesson I've learned,
that you would want to share with
um,
like young people?
marriage is something good, but you have to be prepared for it and you have to know your partner. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
People do change, but you have to know your partner.
Okay.
Okay, and you have to understand your partner, and your partner have to understand you. Unless that is done, you will not be able to, you will not have a good marriage. Okay, and there must be that mutual understanding to say, well, okay, this is my wife, this is my husband, and she comes first. Otherwise, there will always be problems. And another thing again, not every little problem that comes between you and your partner that you have to run to a third person. You must be able to sit with your partner and deal with that problem between the two of you all. If it really is something that you need a third person, then you can escalate it. But you must be able to deal to the two of you all must be able to rectify that problem before you go out there.
Okay. What do you think? I know that I said that was the last question, but
Yes,
based on
you
what you
said.
said, I just had a question, a quick follow up is what do you think is a good problem solving strategy or skill in marriage? Like when problems do come up, how do you think is the best way to solve those problems?
Well, I've always heard persons say a good way that married couples should grow up is never go to bed on your problem before you solve it. So I believe that when there is a problem in marriage, the first thing the couple should do is talk about it. But as humans, sometimes the problem arises and we don't want to hear each other. We feel we are right, we don't want to hear each other. But I believe the right way a problem arises, let's talk about it. Let's talk about it, trash it out, and see who is right, who is wrong. And maybe both of us are right, or maybe both of us are wrong. But we have to trash it out, and from the discussion, we will agree to disagree.
Okay. Okay. Well,
Yeah.
thank
But it
you.
does
Thank
not
you.
always happen, my boy. It
Yeah,
does
I
not
know.
always happen.
I wanted.
Especially if you have a partner that is not at your level, whatever you say, they may not see it. So, you
Yeah,
know,
so it's good in theory, but in the practical
but
side
it
of
may not,
stuff, you
yeah, it
might
may
not.
not be practical. It may
Yeah,
not be
yeah.
practical.
But it's a
But
good.
again,
It's a
patience is key to it in marriage. Patience is key.
okay. Um. So now we're going to move a little, just change the conversation a little, and I just
Hmm.
you alluded to it a little earlier in speaking about like children and stuff like
Oh,
before
okay.
I even asked you like um when did you think about children? It's just like I wanted to ask you like why did you want children?
Okay, well, I wanted children because I mean, I am happy to be alive, and so I want to bring forth my own, so then I can love them and treat them the way that my parents treated me. Okay,
Yeah,
I never wanted too many. I wanted four, but after I had two, I say no, that's it.
I think four is a lot. You talk about too
Yes,
many, but
in growing up, you don't know what exactly it entails. You see children and you love children. You don't know what,
yeah,
but after you go through it, I said no. I wanted
yeah,
four, maybe two boys, two girls. But then after I had the two and I realized I had a pair, I said, thank you, Jesus. That's enough for me.
yeah. Because like right now, obviously not just in St. Lucia but around the world, like countries are struggling with like population decline just because people are not
Mm-hmm.
having children like they
Yes,
used to
yes.
have to. For example, like my grandmother, your mother had like 10 children, so like
Mm-hmm.
that was very common, not just like there but
Yeah,
just
it was
like
very
in
common. But in
in
growing up, my
America.
mother always says she don't want none of her children to have that amount.
Okay, okay. But yeah, it's just like you've seen that decline. So it's just why do you think that we've seen that decline in people wanting to have like children? Even in St. Lucia, for example, like the government has tried its best to kind of encourage children in a sense of children people in a sense of children by like right now like a lot of prenatal things are free, your OBGYN, your
Mm-hmm.
checkups and everything is free.
Yeah,
If in America they're trying to push like to have first time homeowners have things, so when you have families they have things for giving like stipends to new mothers, and you see
yeah.
that around the world as well. Why do you think you've seen a decrease in people having children?
Okay, like we said earlier on, having children, well, no, before that, like we said earlier on, a lot of parents long ago would be housewives. So they were at home. So they were able to make their children and take care of their children while the husband would go out and work. But nowadays, things have changed, and a lot of mothers are working mothers. Now, having children is a full time responsibility. From the time you get pregnant until your child maybe reach 18 years is a full time responsibility. And with you having most of parents, young children, they have a full time job. So it's a lot for them. It's a lot for them. So because of that, some of them will tell you, me, I have my job, I don't want children. Because having children, it takes a lot from me. So they'd rather just don't make children, or if they have one, that is about it.
And what's your thoughts on that?
Um, well, it depends on the person, what the person wants, but I always say it's always wise to have. I mean, as a young person growing up, I'm not saying you have it anytime or anyhow, but I always feel that at least each partner, each couple should have at least two children, at least two.
Okay. What would you say to people who just like, because I mean, we spoke about it. It's just, the economy in St. Lucia has never been like a huge economy. A lot of people live in either in poverty or slightly above it, and it's just like very difficult for a lot of families. What do you say to people who maybe have that love for children and they know that they have that love to offer and they can guide and but just financially they cannot afford it? Like, do you think that that love for children is enough of a reason for them to have a child?
No, because love alone for the child will not be able to take care of the child. So I'm saying if you are not financially stable, you don't have to have everything lavishly, but if you know you're not in a situation, you're not in a position financially to take care of a child from birth until they can take care of themselves, it's better you stay away from having a child. Because
Hmm.
it would be so sad to see you bring forth a child in this world and you cannot take care of them health wise, education, and so on and so forth. Especially in the era we live now where every child they need their PlayStation and they need their phone and school have tours and school have visits and traveling. It's a lot now. So if you're not financially stable, you better stay out of it for the time being.
Okay. Did you have like a timeline of like when you wanted children and how many years in between the children, um in your case?
Actually, no. I do not have no timeline. I just had in mind that I want my children after I got married. But unfortunately or fortunately, it did not even happen that way. Actually, the same year I was getting married, I got pregnant,
Okay.
not even knowing. But then
Okay.
when I happened to know that, I was very disappointed. But my boyfriend at the time, he told me, "Why am I disappointed? I'm getting married to him, and it's his child." So that gave me a little encouragement, and go ahead and plan my wedding. And the good thing is that I was pregnant, but most persons did not know I was pregnant.
Okay.
They did not, because it did not show at that time because it was close to getting married. They didn't know that except for my family who knew that. And I
Mm-hmm.
went to their wedding and got, because when I gave birth to my child, my daughter,
Mm-hmm.
my lovely daughter, my princess, everybody was
Uh-huh.
saying, "You have a premature child." I said, well, don't I wanted to explain to them, like my close friends, I would tell them, "No, my child is not premature. My
Mm-hmm.
child is full term." So it happened that way. And then
Okay.
the second one came, I didn't know. I didn't know. When I went to doctor, when I started feeling somewhat strange, I went to the doctor and he told me I'm pregnant. I was so disappointed. I cried in the doctor's office like a child. And I told
Uh-huh.
the doctor, at that time my daughter was um 4 years. And I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's my first child, and I pump her, and I look at her as my baby, and whatever, whatever. And when the doctor told me I was pregnant, I was like, "Oh Lord, I cannot believe that. How am I going to take care of my baby and another baby on the way?"
Mm-hmm.
But I thought of it and the other thing. But some people have children after 2 years, after 1 year, and they survive. And I
Yeah.
said, "Oh Lord, that's how you give it to me. Thank you, Jesus." And I mean, I had the two of you all, and then I survived with you all.
Yeah.
And I am
Yeah.
more than happy that I did that way. And even in growing up now, I say I should have you all like 2 years apart. But
Mm-hmm.
that's how it happened. So I
Yeah.
had no
Yeah.
timeline.
How did you think your life changed after having Tonya, your first child? Like,
What again?
how do you think your life changed after having Tonya, your first child?
My life changed in every way. I became more patient. I
Mm-hmm.
became more tolerable because I had a child and there are certain things that I had to tolerate. I think I became more loving towards children, knowing that I had my own. I always loved children, but I think I became more loving towards children. And even things that I used to do, like I mean, when I go to bed, it just straight to bed, and that was it. But I
Yeah.
could not have done that again, so I had to time myself that I have to get up and breastfeed the child or change the child and things of that sort. Yeah.
Do you like when you had your children, your first or your second, or did you have a plan for their life? Like, was there a way in your head that you were like, okay, I wanted to go to this school and do this and then be this in life? Like, did you have a plan for your child?
Yes, I had a plan, especially when it comes to the education. I always say I want my children to attend the best school on island. I always want them to be the best in everything that they do.
Mm-hmm.
I had that plan. I did not know how it would be executed, but that was what I wanted. And I don't know if they heard or they understood, but they too had that same feeling that they want to do the best in everything, that they want to go to the best schools and they want to be in everything that's happening around them. They want to be part of it. And I was there for them.
I'll tell you this, that everyone, well, not everyone, but a lot of people that I've spoken to, as I grew up in life, especially now since I'm in the States, can attest to that. That I also have that sense of I always want to be the best, and that could make me very competitive.
Mm-hmm.
But it's something that, like you said, like was definitely ingrained in you in a positive way. It wasn't like better than people in terms of how
Right,
people
right.
are, but it was like
Mm-hmm.
I'm in a class I want to place first. I'm in a sports team I want to win.
Mm-hmm.
I'm racing, I want to win the race. Like whatever I when we did our little elections in school, I wanted to win. Like
Yes.
everything I did, I wanted to be the best.
Mm-hmm.
What do you say to people who are just like, I mean, they're just happy with what their children do as long as their children just, you know give their best, or they just having fun? Like, what do you say to that? Like, people who
Well,
just I
I will tell them, yes, your child have performed well, but there's always room for improvement.
Mhm,
Don't be satisfied with that level. Always push your child. Your child can do more.
mhm. And I think it was a good thing. I've heard a lot of counter arguments about, as long as the child is having fun, as long as, but it's just
No,
that
no,
I
no.
think I think until you push and see how much you could do, or what you could do, or what you like,
Mm-hmm.
you kind of selling yourself short. You know what I mean?
Right. Exactly.
Hmm. So this will well, before I pivot a little more, is how did you support your children's many endeavors? So not just, I mean, you could speak a little bit about financially, but also like, so for example, I was in sports a lot, and Tonya was in sports a lot, and just like coming here in America, you see that the children's sports schedule becomes the parents' sports schedule. In terms of, where I coach right now, like the parents are at every single practice, the parents are at every single game, like every extracurricular, they're dropping them off, picking them up from the either dropping them off on the bus and picking them up. Like, how did you support your children during that time in the many endeavors that we did?
Well, apart from financial support, I used to be present whenever I was available, especially the sports meet. I would ask my supervisor for that day off. If I am working, I would have to find myself there to be part of it. Although I am not a sports person, but I would be there to give them the support, and I would be making the most noise on the field. Oh yes, I would be making the most noise on the field.
But I remember every single sports meet that we had, you would be there. I think because of maybe you don't see sports in the same light that us. Maybe like with stuff like my cricket games or my football games, it was not there. But I always tell people that, because when I came here and I saw that, I was like, but I always tell people like that never really affected me, just because I
Thank
mean,
God.
I was kind of doing it for myself in a sense,
Mm-hmm.
and that's
Mm-hmm.
something I liked. I think with Tonya played a lot of games, a lot of netball games with Convent,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
and I
Well, in as
don't.
much as I would not be present at the football and the netball, but the
Mhm,
support like dress dropping you all off or
mhm.
picking you all up or staying up and wait for you all, that I would do.
Yeah, 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 and we definitely appreciated that,
You're most
you
welcome.
know. So I'm going to pivot a little bit about, and this would have been maybe more um relevant last month in Creole Heritage Month. But my question to you is, why did you why did you think why didn't you make speaking Creole or Patois or Creole a priority to us as children? Or why do,
Um,
or generally, because I
mm,
think with a lot of the people I grew up with, especially going to college and stuff, like they did not get that kind of exposure to the Creole language. Why did you think you didn't make that a priority for your
well,
children?
I couldn't make it a priority at the time because in growing up, Creole or Patois was spoken mostly by the elderly folks, the grown persons, but not the young children. It was almost forbidden for young children to speak Creole. They would probably do a little bit of it when they out, if they grow up with their elderly person, that if they would learn a little something and speak out, but in their home, no. So I grew up in that same breath. Although in growing up at my parents' home, we spoke Creole because my mother was not very fluent in English, so she would converse to us in Creole. But when I had my children, I looked at Creole as something. I mean, there was no talk about Creole in school and nothing like that. So basically, it was strictly English. It was strictly English.
How do you think now about people putting that priority on Creole to teach it in schools? Excuse me, have a dictionary for it and like pushing it into the young generation.
I don't I have a problem with it because they said it's a language, and if it is a language and we speak it, I think it is necessary that we learn more about it. So, and with the younger generations coming up, I think it is ideal for them to learn it too. So it's a good thing taking it to the schools, so it will not be like something out of the ordinary if they have to talk about, if they have to speak it or translate whatever somebody says in English to know exactly what it is.
Do you think it's a priority for children to learn Creole?
No, I don't think it is a priority, but it can be something on the side.
Do you think that children not learning Creole can lead to a divide between the older generation and the younger generation? For example, so here in America, I've noticed that a lot of people are very close with their extended family, like their grandparents. I wouldn't say a lot, but there are people who are very close with their extended family, like their grandparents and stuff. In St. Lucia, a lot of people from the older generation, I would say people 60, 70, 80 plus, mostly, especially where we're from in the rural part of St. Lucia, speak Creole because that was the dominant language at that time.
Yes,
And
yes.
now that children are growing up, even with me, with my grandparents, a lot of them spoke Creole, and that's their first
Mhm.
language almost. Like, do you think that creates a divide between the communication in terms of they not feeling very close to their grandparents? Like, that's my grandmother, but
You cannot communicate.
she's not able to tell me stories about her growing up. I'm not
Mhm.
able to tell her what I'm doing right now because I speak English, she speaks Creole. Like, how do you feel about that?
Well, um, like you said, yes, that would create a divide between the children growing up and their parents. But I can tell you, my boy, the parents, they would try their best to bring the English forward for the grandchildren. They were not fluent in it, but the little that they knew, they would put it together so that they communicate with their grandchildren. But honestly, for as you said, it creates a divide because the young children, when the parents would speak the Creole, they neither here or there, they don't know what they are saying, whatever. But the parents, on the other hand, would try their best with the little English they know.
So do you think that like there's just a sentiment that this is a language of like people who are not educated or people like, do you think that that's the case? And if so, like, do you also think that we're working on changing it from being a language of the quote unquote uneducated and now into a language of pride, that hey, this is a thing that we should take pride in, this is ours, this is not just this is a global language, we have other countries speaking it, and this is something that we should definitely teach in schools the same way we teach St. Lucian history, it should be part of St. Lucian history.
Well, honestly, before that's how it was looked at as
Hmm.
a language of persons that like poor persons, persons that are not educated. But now that they've delved into it, they've gotten the history of it. We've come to realize that Creole is just another language. It has nothing
Exactly.
to do with persons that are not educated or persons that are poor. So I think gradually it is becoming, it is coming, persons are becoming to understand that it is another language and it is something important for you to learn a second language. And I think most persons have agreed that it should be taught in school, it should be taught to young children growing up, so they learn two languages.
Yep, yeah. I 100% agree, especially when you leave the country. I think you see how important it is that, I mean, this is a country of immigrants. This is a country of almost everyone here having family from another place. So whether it be that people are Hispanic and they speak Spanish, people are Italian and they speak Italian and English, and
Mhm.
this, or people, French and English, or any language in English, and just being able to relate to that point, I think is a point of pride for a lot of people. And
Mhm.
then when you leave the country as a Sanusian, it's a point of pride for you to meet another Sanusian, be able to converse with them
Definitely.
in Creole. Okay, so w- gonna pivot a little bit again and just like ask you, as we got older, what were your feelings about your children leaving St. Lucia? Short term, like with Tonya for a little bit and coming back, and long term with like myself.
Oh my boy, it was mixed feeling. I knew the reason. For example, for Tonya, I knew she was going to further education. I was happy for her, but at the same time, I was heartbroken. I was heartbroken. Number one, I mean, I grew up with my children. I've always been close to them. They've never been away for long without me. And Tonya was very young. I had no relatives where she went to. I had, in fact, I had nobody there. And for her to leave and I'm not there, and my children grow up. As I'm talking there, I feel a little emotional. Eh?
Yeah,
Growing
that's
up, my
fine.
children, I used to do everything for them. So when I think of she having to go up there and I'm not there to cook for her, to wash for her, and she's at school, it really took a toll on me. But I've been that spiritual person that I am. I put everything in the hands of God and I say, Lord, let your will be done. And she went up there. She was able to take care of herself. She was able to study and return home. And it was a joy for me for her coming back home. And she's there until now. But
Yeah.
with you, Javel, it was another story again. You're going further. You're going further and you're younger.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I wanted you to go overseas. I wanted, because you always say that you don't want to stay in St. Lucia. You always had that dream of going overseas to go to school. And,
Mm-hmm.
I wanted it to happen for true. But then when it really hit me that, yes, Javel is going away and Javel is young and to make it worse, you're a boy, you have to cook, you have to wash, and I'm not around.
Mm-hmm.
How is it going to happen? So it was really mixed feelings for me when you are left my home. Tonya spent 2 years and you spent four, and then you went on another two again. But
And now I'm on another one.
as time went by, I mean, it was hard for me, honestly. The first years, it was really, really hard for me. I cried, whatever. But as time went by, it became a little easier for me. And what really helped me again is right now we have social media. I am able to talk to you all. I was able to, I mean, like every day we could talk and if you all have a problem, we share it. And so that made it a little bearable for me. But it has never been something easy. It has never been something easy if you all having to leave home.
Yeah. How did you think that affected like the wider family, as in like extended family or family events, or like just like Christmases or birthdays
Mhm.
or Creole Day celebrations, or how did you think that affected the family?
Oh, yes, it affected the family very much because number one, the numbers got smaller. And secondly, especially during Christmas time when we have our Christmas lunch. I remember the first year you went up and you were not able to come down. Christmas Day is the day that we always enjoy as family. But that year, I was unconsolable. And my sisters had to be talking to me and then just helping me understand that you are happy and you will survive and so on and so forth. But it was really, really difficult for me. And by me not enjoying it, it's like they too would not enjoy it too. So it really affected the family. But now it's a little better for us. We know that you are there and you're older and you can take care of yourself. So even if you're not home for Christmas, we can talk to you during Christmas and then we have a good time.
Okay. Do you think that there is more good or bad from families, for lack of a better term, being kind of torn apart by like immigration or having to move for work with some of my aunties or your sisters, and some of our cousins, or education? Like, do you think that there's more good or bad to people leaving St. Lucia for whatever reason, because of like economics or education or anything like that?
I don't understand that question.
Do you okay? Do you think it's more of a positive or negative that people have to leave St. Lucia for um either an
But better life.
education or better
Uh-huh.
life? Or because on one side you can argue that yes, people are getting an education which can lead to more money, or people go to work, they can earn more money. On the negative side, you can see that it really separates families, because for example, with me, like, we've had a lot of young family members come along, like with my cousin's children and all of that, and my uncle's children, that I know very little about. Sometimes I struggle to remember their names. So you have that kind of breaking apart of the family, in a sense that growing up, we were very close with cousins of everyone, and like the whole family. So do you think it's more of a negative or positive thing?
I think it is more of a positive than negative. Yes, there are the negative effects to it, but I think it is more of a positive because in St. Lucia, whatever you Tonya intended to do, you all were not able to get it in St. Lucia. And staying in St. Lucia, you all would not be any better than where you all are. So I think it is a positive way that you all went up there, and especially you living up there, you that in with that you can even make way for maybe a cousin of yours, or yeah, one of your cousins or nieces or whatever, who maybe want to come up there. You may guide them and extend some courtesy to them if you have to. So I think it's more of a positive, and also with the extended family too, or even your family. Before, I would want to go to the States, but I had no family up there that I would say stay by. But
Yeah.
right now, I can say, okay, I'm on vacation, I'll go by my son. I have a sister that I could go by her. So I think it brings more positive to our family than negative.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, to be fair, I'm still very much like in the middle of that, because obviously, like, I would have loved for St. Lucia to have a good university that we can go to, and for St. Lucia to
Mhm.
have good paying jobs, so that we never had to leave, just because of
Right.
beyond the economics and even the family, just the general living conditions in terms of the weather and like everything that comes with that. Would have been nice to stay. So I'm really on the fence, but obviously I'm very grateful for the opportunity. I know there are tons of people who would have loved to leave St. Lucia for like an education. So I'm very
Right.
grateful and very blessed to have been given that opportunity. But yeah, it's just that I see people who don't have to leave their country to get an education. Their university is down the street from them. So
Mhm.
even on a weekend, they can go to their parents' home and have dinner. They can go to church. They can get their laundry done there. And I see that it's a really nice thing for them. It would have been nice to
Mhm.
be able to
Mhm.
do the same in St. Lucia. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, my last question for you here is, what do you think the role of like adult children in St. Lucia is? For example, like, when we know in that St. Lucia, it's very common, like maybe in the States, like you go to college and then after college you get a job and you rent an apartment, so you never really go home. But with St. Lucia, like, obviously a lot of people stay with their families for beyond their teenage years or their early 20s. So what do you think, like, at that point when you're an adult but you're still a child, what do you think the role of that child who's an adult is?
I think your role as a child is assisting your parents, or if you have
Mm-hmm.
other siblings, I think basically that is your role. The same way that they assisted you, I think now it's your turn to extend a hand to your parents or to your siblings in whatever way that is needed. I'm not saying you leave yourself behind, but you should be willing and able to assist them. I think that's your role.
Okay, because yeah, I mean it's also that's another thing that's very up in the air. Not for me, but I think around the world that a lot of people see that independence of I am now done with college or whatever. I want to get an apartment or anything like. What do you say to people who want that independence so bad that they maybe go out there and struggle with a small apartment and struggling to pay bills, as opposed to kind of moving back in with their parents?
Well, for me, I think that once you're comfortable at your parents' home, there
Mm-hmm.
is no need to rush to go into an apartment. Instead of rushing to go into an apartment, you comfortable at your parents' home, you don't have a problem at your parents' home, you stay home and try to get a piece of land and then build on your time. Instead of rushing into apartment, having to pay rent and everything, you comfortable, stay at your parents' home. Like I've always said to my daughter, you comfortable at your home, you can stay here for as long as you want. I don't have a problem.
Do you think that there is a time though when it's kind of like, okay, you have to kind of get on your own? Because some people can be comfortable and they can spend their 30s, 40s, 50s at the. Do you think that there is a time where people should be like, okay, like I get that you're comfortable and I'm glad that we make you comfortable here, but you kind of need to move out on your own and build your, like, what do you think that stage is? When do you think someone
Um,
should do that?
well, actually, I've never thought of it that way, because to me, the young person within themselves would say, okay, you know what? I am that age now. I think it's time for me to start thinking of building. I don't know if it's because my family, that's how we did it.
Mm-hmm.
You finish school, you start working, you stay at your parents' home, but then you think, okay, at that time it's time for me to settle down. I will build my home, or I have a boyfriend, we'll build our home and we move in. So I have never looked at it to say that there's an age where I would say, well, okay, that's the age you should move. I think the young person within themselves should see to themselves that, okay, I need to leave my mother's home. But now that you mention that, I realize for true, some persons are whatever age, and because they're comfortable at their parents' home, they still at their parents' home and they do anything for themselves.
Right.
Well, yeah, well, I'm saying at that stage, the parents should come in and talk to their child and say, well, okay, you comfortable, you're not troubling me, but I think it's time that you buy a piece of land, it's time that you build a house, even if you don't go and live in the house, but use it
Right.
as an investment. I think the parents should come and, give some advice at that time.
Okay. And just to wrap up here, I'll just ask you to any final thoughts, any final words for people, like young people who thinking of like marriage, thinking of kids, and what advice would you give to yourself right now if you were talking to Mrs. Jacqueline Tobierre at 20 years old right now? What would or 23 years old? What advice would you give her regarding those two things?
Here, I would tell Jacqueline, yes, it's a good thing to get married, but make sure you get somebody that is compatible, or somebody that is within your scope, both education wise and both understandable wise, so you all understand each other. And also, be prepared to have children. Don't rush into it. Be prepared to have your children, but if it comes and you're not prepared, take care of them, love them, cherish them, and they will show you love in return. Do whatever you can do for them to love them, because you've already had them. But always be prepared.
Okay.
I think that's what basically what
Okay.
it is.
Okay, thank you. It was very insightful. I could say I'm not, I know people who know what time they were born and they know so much about their parents. Where I personally am not like super interested in that stuff. So I've never really asked those questions, but I think it's very insightful because I think a lot of young people right now are just like at that age, that I'm now. I have a lot of, not a lot, but I have a friend who just got married. I have friends having children and stuff like that. So like that's kind of so I think just talking about that, I think people would be interested in hearing from people's perspective who have done it. So it was good to hear about like the marriage preparation and everything. So I'm very thankful for your insight and you being open and transparent about those things, and being
Mhm.
honest. So thank you very much for your time.
You most
Um,
welcome.
and yeah, that would be the end of the episode. So thank you everyone for listening, and I hope you find this enjoyable and look forward to the next episode. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.